Hey, hey, my magical friends. So we have a Mercury retrograde that's starting on the 27th, which is Monday. And I wanted to come on and let you know two things. First, we have a Mercury retrograde challenge that's starting on Monday in the Living a Magical Life Facebook group. So make sure that you are in that group, or you may be seeing this in the group already. So that means you're in there. And that is going to give us something that's simple and effective every day to work with the energies of a Mercury retrograde, as well as to look at things in a little bit of a different perspective, right? So we're working with it rather than trying to, push against it, right? So I also wanted to come on and give you 9 reasons to love the Mercury retrograde. How crazy does that sound, right? But it's true. So we've all heard the retrograde is going to just screw with everything, right? Like, don't buy anything, don't sign contracts, don't start new relationships, all this kind of stuff that you need to not do, right? And for some of us, first off, we are not affected by the retrograde, right? Some of us do not have that effect of the astrological aspects of our connection to universe, God, one source, all, whatever you call it, right? We just don't work within that. Just like some of us are very drawn to the moon and work with the moon, and others of us do not, right? It's always you do you, witchy poo. But I feel like the Mercury retrograde, because all of the planets go retrograde at some point or another multiple times, right? During every year and for long periods of time. But we always hear the emphasis on Mercury retrograde because Mercury is all about our thought processes, right? So that's why it screws things up, supposedly. Okay. So again, I want to give you 9 reasons to love the Mercury retrograde. So here we go. Number 1, Mercury retrograde helps you to shake things up, to get out of a rut, and to have more fun. What? It does. You can call it chaos if you want, right? Or you can look at it and call it the universe pushing you in a new direction, or to try something new, or to look at something in a new perspective. Everything can get boring if we do things the same way for a long period of time. So when we throw in the energy and the chaos of Mercury retrograde, we get a fresh creative look and outlook and view on things, right? It makes us look at things a little bit differently. And that's a good thing. Okay. Number 2 is Mercury retrograde supports you in finally understanding and fixing the long-standing health issues or mechanical issues that you may be having. You can say, oh my gosh, friggin' my car broke down and it's because of Mercury retrograde, right? Like, screw Mercury retrograde. But it is actually the energies of the retrograde that has allowed you to see that it was your driving and not the retrograde that made your brakes, right? Like, go out, and to be grateful that it happened then as compared to when you were going down a steep hill or something, right? So it's not the retrograde that causes it. It's the retrograde that brings it into illumination of what needs to be done or changed. Okay. So then 3, Mercury retrograde lets you get introspective and lets you look deeper into your relationships so that you can speak your truth and lead to healing. Communication is going to feel like it's stymied during those times, right? It's going to feel like it's all caught up and you can't say things right and your words don't get across the way that you want them to. But that's only because you're stepping into your truth. And when we step into our truth, and we speak our truth, those things tend to happen because we have to take into consideration all of the things that we're trying to get across, yet avoid at the same time. We're trying to get across our point, hoping that they understand our perspective, hoping that you can get the words out in the right way to not deeply hurt someone else, right? But that's not the Mercury retrograde energies that's causing that communication to feel stuttered. That's just us wanting to make sure that our communication is correct, because retrograde tends to allow us to look at things internally. And that can sometimes be uncomfortable, but it's not the retrograde's fault. Okay, 4, Mercury retrograde lets us break unhealthy habits. It makes it easier for us to break unhealthy habits. And that's because of the chaotic energy, right? We feel that everything's chaotic because we have different perspective, ideas, everything's coming to light, and things that we've been thinking of deeply. And when we're doing something that is detrimental to our health or against our moral standards internally, like smoking cigarettes, for example, nothing against smokers, but just saying it's not a healthy habit, right? And we know that, but we continue to do it. When things get shaken up, it's a perfect time to set down new boundaries and goals so that when all the dust settles, right, when the Mercury goes direct again, then you're newly established into what it is that you want, which at this point would be not reaching for that cigarette. So what we consider the chaotic energy of Mercury retrograde actually makes it a perfect time to set in and release some of the old things that we've been doing just because we've been doing them that way. Okay, number 5 is that Mercury retrograde actually allows you to scan back and get a different perspective on pretty much everything. So we live our life within the forest, right? We can see the trees, tree for tree for tree. The energy, the chaos, if you want to call it, of the Mercury energy pulls us back. It takes us and allows us to step back out of the forest so that we can see the forest, right? So now we're not looking at individual trees, we're looking at the picture as a whole. And then when we get into that perspective, it allows us to heal things on a long-term basis rather than just kind of patching the individual trees that we're normally looking at. And within that same thought process, number 6 is that Mercury retrograde provides clarity for examining and revising old decisions that you've made. So sometimes we ask like, man, I'd like to call a do-over on that decision, right? Or a do-over on that choice that I made at whatever point. You're able to do that again, because as we said in 5, you can pull back and look at the entirety of the issue, situation, or circumstance. Mercury retrograde doesn't cause the issues. It makes you realize and see them in a different light so that you can analyze, correct, and restore certain things. Number 7, Mercury retrograde dials you into your intuition. This one is big because if you think of, and maybe you know this and maybe you don't, but there is an author, and I can't remember the author's name right off the top of my head, but I'll look it up for you guys and put it in there so you can see where I got this from. But at some point in this book, it states that 50% of the Fortune 500 companies that are long-term successes started during a Mercury retrograde. Because we become so much more heightened during this time on what we're feeling and the signs that we're seeing and making sure that we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's, right? That we become very much more in tune with our gut instincts, with our intuition. And that allows us to open up and start a lot of new, exciting, fun, and successful things during a retrograde. I just thought that was a really neat statistic about Mercury retrograde. It is a far cry from the don't buy a car, don't sign any contracts, don't start anything new or purchase anything big during a Mercury retrograde, right? That kind of tells you it's the opposite of it. It can actually be very enlightening into what your next step should be. What are the signs that I'm getting that say, yeah, you should definitely do this, or yes, this is the perfect thing, or how did universe put you onto the path of your perfect new car at the best price possible because you listened to the intuition that you were more in tune to because you were trying to overcompensate for what you think is a lack of energies. Okay, number 8, Mercury retrograde lets you clear up old misunderstandings. And for the same reason, right? We get to look at things that have happened in the past. We get to step back and view everything from a different perspective. And it allows us to then let it go or fix it so that when you come out on the other side of it, you're like, oh, I am so much more at peace with that now. Mercury retrograde didn't cause the misunderstanding. Mercury retrograde just brought the illumination to the misunderstanding, brought your focus to it so that you could heal it, so that you could move past it. So that's an awesome thing. And then last, Mercury retrograde releases obsessive or repetitive thought patterns and promotes a sense of mindful calm. That goes against everything that you've ever heard about Mercury retrograde, right? The planet Mercury is about rapid thought, right? And that's why when it goes retrograde, we have the opportunity to kind of sit down, relax, contemplate, go within, reevaluate, analyze, look at things logically, right? Because we have the time to do that within our thoughts. When it goes direct, then you step back into that gotta go, right? Again, these are all if you're affected by astrological energies or you work with astrological energies in any way. So through this Mercury retrograde, again, I hope that you will join the Living a Magical Life Facebook group where we have the 21-day Mercury retrograde challenge starting on Monday. It's going to be so much fun, and it's super easy stuff. It's not like deep shadow work and heavy stuff like that at all. Again, this is a time that we get to kind of calm our mind a little bit, actually. We get to step back and go, okay, you know what? What do I need to analyze? What do I need to let go of? What do I need to apologize for? What do I need to just simply redirect, right? So I kind of love a Mercury retrograde, and hopefully those 9 things give you a reason to look at this Mercury retrograde a little bit differently than you have in the previous ones. Hope to see you in the group. If you're in this group and seeing it in the Living a Magical Life Facebook group and seeing it, I'm so happy and glad that you're here, and we'll kick it off on Monday. Have a wonderfully magical rest of your day.